Alrighty, so we're starting a new week. This week we're talking about radios, and we'll decide which book we want to look at first. We have a decent mix. We're talking about radio waves, also about radio broadcasting, and then there's one other book where it's fiction, and I'm not entirely sure what it's about yet, but the title of it is Radio Waves. So I do have the new website up. The new website is Book Pagesdale. So I think I talked about it. I might have shared it a little bit. I think I did. Bookpagesdale.com. Sounds kind of funny. It's growing on me a little bit. And hopefully at some point I can just get Pagesdale back. And here it is. So you come into the website and you'll see the most recent monthly itinerary. Now, this particular itinerary isn't as detailed as ones in the past. Ideally, you can come in, if you like the itinerary, you can do self-booking. You can click here and you can book the travel you just saw there. Even if you don't want to go ahead and book it for yourself. And I'll travel, and you kind of like the concept behind Pages, instructional design, or a specific itinerary, or really any other services. This is a way to kind of support if you'd like to, without having to go for something you really don't need. So on the other part of the website for services, instructional, then you can find that here for businesses and for families or consumers. I might end up changing the name from consumer to family services, but what I have right now, just for me to organize everything, that's how it is, but it might change to something a little bit more user-friendly. So yeah, business research and all of that. So if you decide that you are looking for writing services, maybe you'd really like to have a short story written, and you just want to have that short story written about your family, something like that. And yeah, so I can write a short story for families. If you scroll on down, okay? Also do a little bit of research. If you're looking for a community museum that you'd like to go to for a particular topic that someone's really interested in, I can do some research on a really good community museum. And that's that. Click on what you're looking for and add it to your cart. And please make sure that you add in your contact information. Okay, so you can add in your email, things like that. It's in Spanish on my computer. On yours, if that becomes an issue with language, let me know. I think it updates from computer to computer. But yeah, please make sure that you put your email address so that I can and get some details. Now, of course, if you'd like to send an email and clarify these details before you go ahead and put in the payment, then that makes perfect sense, and that works as well. But it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I don't have a bunch of descriptions thing because it's pretty clear. I have a bunch of different services, so the names themselves are pretty clear. And then from there, there's still quite a bit of possibility, and I'd like to keep that open. Meet that creative need, right? And then if you come over to the blog, I'll add some short stories every now and then. Right now I have this short story running on the sidewalk. And that's it. It's a really simple site, square up, and it's really just about seeing what's offered and making those payments. Right now, all I have are services. I don't have products. Once I have products, then I'll put services and products on there as well. Really simple site. So let's go ahead and go into archive.org. Archive.org and the lists. And radio workshops. So today I did something a little bit different with Instagram. With the story, I added some music links. And the music is pretty explicit. It has quite a bit of curse words and stuff like that in it. But those were the links, the options that came up related to radio that weren't books and weren't podcasts. So the first one here, that's coming up really shortly. These are all the books. And yeah, so there's Grand Theft Auto 3. And then there's this other one, which I'm not familiar with at all. It's just Radio Lost and Found. And you can listen to those. So Internet Archive is pretty cool. I hadn't clicked on the audio files option to see how it was set up, and it's really nice. It's really clean. So there you go. And I listened to this, and it's good. It's more of a kind of alternative rock and a little bit of talk show. And honestly, Grand Theft Auto is similar, but it has more genres. And it's good, but not really child friendly, I will say that. So I think the best one to start with for today would be the one that was first in the list on Instagram, and that's this one. Education's Own Stations, History of Broadcasting, Radio to Television. The title here is different. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll see what happens when we go ahead and look through the book. Started a little bit late today, but History of Broadcasting, Radio to Television. Okay, by Education's Own Stations. The history of broadcast licenses issued to educational institutions. Preface. All right, so what's going on? Soon after, he requested that a specially appointed interdepartmental committee of the government consider the possible advantages or disadvantages that might accrue if the federal government's interest in all communications in the United States should be consolidated in one regulatory authority. This committee initiated inquiry into the telephone, the telegraph, and the radio, embodying its findings in a report to the president. After the receipt of this report, Mr. Roosevelt sent a special message to Congress proposing that legislation be enacted to effect such consolidation. The proposal, which purported to meet suggestions contained in the president's message, was debated in both houses of the Congress, and the resulting legislation was the Communications Act of 1934, by which was created the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC. When the measure as first presented to both houses of Congress was being debated, various amendments were proposed, some of which suggested that a certain portion or percentage of broadcasting frequencies available for use in the United States be set aside for specific as opposed to general purposes. If the merits of all these proposals had been debated thoroughly on the floor of Congress, it's reasonable to suppose that the House and Senate would still be arguing over the bill. To settle this legislative jam, there was included in the act a finally passed and mandated upon by the Communications Commission that hearings on the merits of the various proposals should be held promptly, and furthermore, that the findings of these hearings with recommendations thereon be reported to Congress by a specific date. The exact wording of this mandate is as follows. The Commission shall study the proposal that Congress by statute allocate fixed percentages of radio broadcasting facilities to particular types or kinds of nonprofit radio programs, or to persons identified with particular types or kinds of nonprofit activities, and shall report to Congress not later than February 1st, 1935, its recommendations together with the reasons for the same. On January 22nd, 1935, the Communications Commission made its report to Congress, and the following sentences of that report are of interest in this connection. The Federal Communications Commission respectfully recommends that at this time no fixed percentages of radio broadcast facilities be allocated by statute to particular types or kinds of nonprofit radio programs or to persons identified with particular types or kinds of nonprofit activities. The Commission proposes to hold a national conference at an early date in Washington, at which time plans for mutual cooperation between broadcasters and nonprofit organizations can be made to the end of combining the educational experience of the educators with the program technique of the broadcasters, thereby better to serve the public interest. The conference should also consider such specific complaints as might be made by nonprofit groups against the actions of commercial broadcasters in order that remedial measures may be taken if necessary. The Commission intends also actively to encourage the best minds among broadcasters and educators alike in order to develop a satisfactory technique for presenting educational programs in an attractive manner to the radio listener. Cooperation with the United States Commissioner of Education and other governmental agencies already established to assist in building helpful radio programs will be sought to an even greater degree than it now exists. The Commission feels in particular that broadcasting has a much more important part in the educational program of the country than has yet been found for it. We expect actively to assist in the determination of the rightful place of broadcasting in education and to see that it is used in that place. The conference announced in this report to the Commission, the conference announced in this report to the Commission was duly held in Washington beginning May 15, 1935, and itself resulted in a decision on the part of the Communications Commission to form a federal radio education committee under the chairmanship of United States Commissioner of Education, Dr. John W. Studebaker. The purpose of this committee was to combine forces with the educators on the one hand and the broadcasters on the other within the present American broadcasting structure. One, to eliminate controversy and misunderstanding between groups of educators and between the industry and educators, and two, to promote actual cooperative arrangements between educators and broadcasters on national, regional, and local basis. As members of this committee, 40 individuals active in the educational broadcasting and in the industry itself were appointed. Organization of the committee was announced in January of 1936, and its first meeting was held on February 17th and 18th of that year. Subcommittees have been at work ever since on various phases of problems referred by the Commission to the committee. In general, it has been agreed by the committee that neither educators nor broadcasters believe any proposal has yet been presented which will solve the so-called problems of educational broadcasting, and that before any recommendations in respect to educational broadcasting are proposed to the industry, to American education and the Federal Communications Commission or to Congress, the principle should be established that certain fundamental inquiries must be undertaken and that certain controlled experimentations with programs must be conducted. In other words, it is admitted that even after more than 10 years of activity in the educational broadcasting arena, certain basic and fundamental facts about the subject have not yet been collected and are not being collected as a matter of routine, so that they will constantly be available to the Commissioner of Education, to the broadcasting industry, to Congress, or to the public generally. That information contained in the book, which Mr. Frost has prepared under conditions which he has described in his introduction, makes an important contribution to the subject no one will attempt to deny. The wisdom of collecting it before it is irretrievably lost will be apparent immediately. Deductions to be made from the data collected in the manner described by Mr. Frost will remain the privilege of the individual who reads the material submitted. The reader should guard himself against either too much optimism or too much pessimism in contemplating these statistics. When we consider an aspect of American radio, we must remember that we are dealing with intangible and imponderable matters which cannot always be recorded accurately, no matter how elaborate the statistical machinery or the method of inquiry. In this particular study, we are concerned also with a large number of individual situations, and no two of which are conditions exactly alike. In one sense, therefore, comparisons or deductions are valueless. In the broad sense, we must take into account characteristics of the radio itself, which is a product of the technological development of the early part of the 20th century. We are concerned with an industry which, in some respects, admittedly has outrun its own anticipated goals. In American industrial development, we have seen the amazing growth of industries trafficking in material goods. The radio broadcasting industry, by reason of the fact that it derives its support and makes its profit by selling time to advertisers, is trafficking in human intelligence. An authority whereby those who sell goods are made to realize their public responsibility, if perchance they do not see it, admittedly, is necessary, and the degree to which that authority is exercised depends upon the willingness of those in control of the industry to see and accept their public responsibility. In the early days of radio, and as we regard it today, broadcasting started in 1920. The acceptance of this responsibility was evident. Those who were most concerned with its development in their public utterances had some inkling of its coming power as an instrument to reach the public and to raise or lower the level of national culture. It appears that not until broadcasting was injected into debates on the proposed Federal Radio Act of 1927 did a change occur in this basic philosophy. The writer has not discovered an adjective that will describe accurately the regrettable situation which has since developed, for broadcasting has become a political football in Washington. Throughout all this checkered history, the educator, traditionally regarded as impractical and idealistic, has had a difficult time. Suddenly, there was placed in his hands a powerful weapon for the distribution of intelligence. In attempting to use it, he found himself immersed in a new species of mud. So far, no one has been able to discover a means for extracting him. One phase of this experience Mr. Frost has recorded. As might be expected, it is not altogether a pretty picture, and various interpretations of it that logically can be made are not pleasing. At least here are facts which, after all, the government, the broadcasting industry, and American education can use in further consideration of a problem with which all of them are and will continue to be concerned. Mr. Frost's statistics indicate that there remain several dozen stations owned and operated by educational institutions. These can be regarded either as the fittest that have survived or the forerunners of a new day. Since the passage of the Federal Radio Act of 1927 and the kaleidoscope growth of broadcasting as an industry, there are many who believe that since broadcasting is an industry and since it exists to make money, its earlier recognition of its public responsibility has completely disappeared, and that the only hope in the American situation is this group of stations licensed to broadcast for non-commercial purposes. Whether this is true or not is immaterial in this connection. What does matter, and what is undoubtedly true, is that unless adequate financial support is given to stations of this type as an index of their potential importance in a free and independent broadcasting system, they too will disappear. It is for the authorities, both civic and educational, in the communities where these stations exist to accept this responsibility. No fulminations against commercial broadcasting or criticisms of industry practices will be of any avail. If the American people and their comparative youth as a nation have not risen to a level where they regard broadcasting as cultural opportunity, they cannot expect either an industry or their government so to regard it. Okay. Table of contents. Wow. Agricultural and Mechanical College of Texas. What is this exactly? So it's an explanation of all the different licenses. I read here that they had their licenses for less than a year, most of them. I read all of this, right? No, I didn't. I didn't read all of this. All right, I have to do this. I have to finish this. One thing I didn't mention is that I'll be posting 2 weeks out from now on. So I have the itineraries done, but this coming up weekend, I should be able to post for the previous week. Is that confusing if I post for the previous week? I don't think so. Post for next week. It gives me more time, and then I should be able to keep up the schedule better. And when I post the goal itineraries, then I should share my goal for posting every day, which hasn't come into effect yet. I like my wood drawings. Okay. So I guess we'll do a travel study, right? Well, do we want to have every activity, every writing activity be radio broadcasting? Anyone can kind of get on a radio broadcast. But try to use radio waves instead. So the R every time is going to be a radio broadcast. So there's that. For the travel for this one, where are we going to go? There's a bunch of places listed here. It was supposed to be about the transition from radio to television. Wasn't that this book? Yeah. This is so much information. It's so tedious. Why is this all in a book? Like, who decided to take their time to do this? Oh, wow. So I need to read more of this, but it seems like they're not saying television though. But this is all about the transition from radio to television. It was really expensive. So a lot of these educational institutions, stations, they were consolidated and or bought out by private companies, which seems to be what's going on now in education. Even with pagesdale, right? I'm not looking to take down school districts. I just wanted to impact the school districts for the schools that are interested. But I think it's becoming much bigger and getting a lot more attention since the Department of Education is at risk. Strange. That's reminding me of just a lot of the public, smaller public institutions getting bought out, even by a university, and then the university getting bought out by a private company. And then a lot of the people that have money to do these things don't have a background in these sorts of things. Which I'm not saying is bad necessarily, but I think that's kind of what happened and what's happening now. If a district is in a desperate situation, a district is in a desperate situation. So But the thing is, districts don't have to go down at all. They really don't have to. Just a minor tweak. A little bit of fundraising. But a lot of fundraising has been shut down because it's being presented as child labor. You have to be, and then you can't like sell your own baked goods. I mean, you can, but you have to have like a license, which is it doesn't really, it's not really hard to get to. Like a serve safe license, all of those things. Yeah, fundraising. I think there's another thing about fundraising. Yeah, the whole child labor thing. A lot of fundraising. Now, one way to possibly work with that is to yeah, it's not the same. It's just not the same. So I'm not seeing anything about television. That's why I'm wondering if this, what we're reading here, can be helpful for what's going on right now. Go to page 350. So this was published in 71. I'm not getting the reason for printing this. I'm not understanding why. I guess it's just fascism? Oh, that doesn't say fascism. Never mind. Radio and education wasn't really given a chance, is what it seems like. I guess I just have to go ahead and read the introduction because I don't understand why this book is here. During 1930, the Committee on Research of the National Advisory Council on Radio and Education, under the leadership of Dr. W. W. Charters, began to field education by reading a sophisticated number of areas in which research studies were privately conducted. History was one of the areas so tested. A detailed analysis of this letter was revealed the urgent need for compilation of the history of all licenses issued by the federal government to educational institutions for the purposes of broadcasting. It was discovered that while much material pertinent to such a study was more or less permanently preserved in the files of the various institutions concerned in the federal government, a great deal that was necessary for a complete understanding of such a history had never been committed to writing but remained in memories of those who closely connected with the radio work and institutions to study. It was realized that time, death, and the shifting of faculty personnel were making any thorough similar material from these letter sources more difficult and in many instances were impossible. Consequently, it was felt by the committee and the council that effort should be made immediately to gather all possible material dealing with this subject. Therefore, Mr. C. E. Lakeman, a member of the council staff, undertook the study and gathered some material by correspondence with authorities and institutions involved. When he withdrew from council, Mr. T. M. C. Johnson carried forward the work and assembled still more information. Upon his transfer to another field of activity, the study was temporarily suspended. In November 1935, the present author became a member of the council staff and was assigned the task of completing the study begun by Mr. Lakeman and Mr. Johnson. Correspondence was immediately established with one more individual connected with the 176 institutions involved in a position to give authoritative data regarding the radio work in these institutions. Each individual was asked specifically to state in as great detail as possible all facts pertinent to the history of the license or licenses with his institution had held or was then holding. In every case where a broadcast license was held by the institution but had been lost, the correspondent was urged to recount fully the reasons or causes for this loss. All material so assembled was taken to the offices of the Federal Communications Commission in Washington and checked carefully against the files of the old radio division. The United States Department of Commerce and the old Federal Radio Commission and the present Federal Communications Commission. Through the courtesy of Dr. Irvin Stewart and Judge Eugene O. Sykes, members of the Commission, all files necessary for this work were made available. Further, staffs of the Commission's licensed docket and legal departments were put at the service of the author and cooperated generously at the time this phase of the study was underway. Materials obtained through correspondence with authorities and institutions studied and from files located in the offices of the Federal Communications Commission, plus additional data gathered from books, articles, mimeograph documents, state records, and numerous personal conferences, were gathered into a first draft of the history of each license. These units were then submitted to the institutions concerned with a request that they be checked carefully for inaccuracies as to data or interpretation. All suggestions received in this manner were again checked with the files of Federal Communications Commission and whenever necessary incorporated into the final draft, which was then resubmitted to institutions for approval and authority to publish. The individuals mentioned at the close of each unit in the pages which follow are those who furnished data, checked each draft of histories, and gave authority to publish. Data in the files of Latter-day Saints College, Salt Lake City, Utah, successor to Latter-day Saints University, revealed that this university was granted a broadcast license by the Radio Division of the United States Department of Commerce sometime in 1921. Since corresponding data is not to be found in the files of this division, now included in files of the Federal Communications Commission, the continent, the contention of the institution that this was the first broadcast license issued to an education institution by the federal government solely from the evidence of people's companion files. Okay, so I understand why. Kind of. So, where do we go though? You go to travel to an educational institution, you travel to a broadcasting station, you travel to where do you read? Where would that go? I guess each one should just be a broadcasting station. Should be a broadcasting station. You go to a broadcasting station. And you read the history of it. And then you just do your own broadcasting like the station does or did. I think that'll work. Yeah, that's it. We're just going to pick a broadcasting station, read the page about it, and then do your own. Let's go back to the table of contents. Beloit, Boise, Concordia, Dayton Dartmouth College, Culver Military Academy. I'm sure that place is still open. Culver Military, I'm not sure, but Culver Military Academy. Culver Military Academy Broadcasting Station. Well, I know they don't have it anymore. Oh. This is okay. All right, we're going to call it a day for today. Yeah. By just saying go to local broadcasting station. Read chosen chapter and make a broadcast relating to topics read in chapter. It's very underdeveloped, I would say. But the title of this is History of Broadcasting. And it's a very specific book indeed. So thank you for joining. It is 8:15 and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.